Dame Dowling, Mr. Greenish, distinguished guests, it's an honor to be here. You might wonder why I'm here, sometimes people make mistakes. So I'm going to start by giving you the background about the mistake. I'm one of those dull and boring chartered accountants who had the privilege of working with one of the top civil engineers here in the UK, Freeman Fox and Partners, which through mergers has become something else now. I had the honor to work with Sir Ralph Freeman and Mr. Kerensky in those days, and they're pioneers like yourselves, actually, in doing great things in life. As the President said earlier today, STEM, architecture, infrastructure are key building blocks for creating economic and social change in the world. I have to accept that accountants actually implement that change, follow that through, so that it's worth remembering. Sometimes we don't remember that well, actually. The finance sector tends to be like the tail wagging the dog, actually. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about how engineering plays a critical role in society, how that links to the work of the United Nations. Last September, 193 member states got together, including President Fakim, and adopted the new agenda, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I want to ask a question. How many of you have heard of the SDGs? So I'm putting an acronym here. This is wonderful news. And I'll explain to you why. In 2000, when we adopted the Millennium Development Goals, it took us several years for people to say, what's MDGs? Things have changed now. Over the years, the UN has opened its doors to a dialogue, realizing that prosperity in the world, addressing economic and social challenges and political challenges, cannot be done by one government, one institution, or one regional bloc alone. It requires the public and private sectors, academia, civil society, working together. So we were delighted to see when those, what we called open working groups took place at the UN over the last few years to set these goals up. And I just want to mention to you that when you look at the work engineers do, and I don't know if we have one or two slides. If I might, if we can so show one or two slides, might give you.
I think you have a change of.
I have that? Okay. Do I press back or next?
Next slide.
So if you look at this, it's quite clear that for the UN to do anything, the drivers of change, drivers of prosperity, are the engineers at the end of the day. And there are 17 goals, and I will show you how these 17 goals come together, where you are actually part of at least 10 of them, actually. If you look at this, this was a beautiful building lit up last year when the UN adopted these goals. And that was the declaration which President Fakim was part of, actually, that we are determined to take these bold and transformative steps, basically, which are urgently needed. And Madam President, you pointed out about Africa. We always think of this as an afterthought. I think time has come that we see Africa as a land of opportunity. In the UN terminology, there's something called least developed countries, and there are 48 of those. I remind people that they're not least developed countries, they're least discovered countries. And that's how we should see the prism. We talk about developing countries. The business side rightly sees it as emerging markets. And that's how we should be seeing that as an opportunity, for example. I want to talk to you about how these things work. When Secretary General Ban Ki-moon put out a call to action, the road to freedom, and so on, he highlighted 5 P's to success, what I call creating peace and prosperity for people and the planet, of course I'm biased, through partnerships. Goals 1 to 16 cover things which everyone in this room believes and supports. And goal 17 is about threading everything together through innovative partnerships and alliances. Now, how did I end up doing partnerships? In 1997, Kofi Annan was elected Secretary General. He came through the ranks. I was privileged to work with him, worked under him. He was Under Secretary General for Peacekeeping Operations. We set up that department in 1993. 1997, he came into office. September of that year, September 97, Ted Turner, the founder of CNN, comes to him. At that time, the US owed over $1 billion to the UN. So he comes to Kofi Annan and he says, Kofi, I'm worth $4 billion today. I was worth $3 billion at the beginning of this year. That additional billion is not doing anything for me. He says, I want to give it to you. So Kofi Annan looks at me. He says, Amir, did he say 1 million? And I said, no, SG. He said, 1 billion with a B. Whoa, can we take that? And I said, no, sir. In accordance with the UN Charter, we cannot accept funds because the funds are, the UN is funded by member states of the United Nations. So he said, okay, can we find a solution? And we had now this is where good accountant comes in. We had the Undersecretary General for Management, Joe Connor, bless him, he passed away a couple of years ago. He was former chairman of PricewaterhouseCoopers. He said to me, let's figure out a way to make this happen. And he was American, and he said, I think I want to demonstrate to Washington that they need to pay up. If Ted pays, they will be encouraged to do something. Ted Turner, lo and behold, that evening goes to an event at the Waldorf, coincidentally Waldorf in New York, and announces that $1 billion gift. We, in turn, created a foundation or an organization, as you rightly mentioned, the UN Office for Partnerships, to serve as the counterpart to receive that gift. Over the years, Ted Turner's gift has leveraged almost another $1 billion. So it just demonstrates that 1 billion, you can make it into 2 billion for good causes. So I was hoping that whilst I'm here on my trip, maybe there might be some Ted Turners in the room who we might encourage. So as a result of Ted Turner's arrival on the scene, UN started to scramble and say, wow, I'm going to get $1 billion. And we set up a system. We said, no, you will not get the 1 billion. We need you to partner with private sector, civil society, actually civil society, academia, governments, bilateral institutions, to create more impact, greater impact. So we created that kind of a structure for it. Then we said, we need to build this as a capacity building exercise for governments, for developing countries. And hence we started what I call the concept of multi-stakeholder partnerships. So US has always been a major supporter, a major funder of the United Nations. A number of other countries have also been major funders. And you will be interested to know that if you, I think I have a slide somewhere, if I'm going too fast, bear with me for a second. I don't think, I have it in front of me. UK is the 4th largest contributor to the United Nations, incidentally, contributing 6% of the UN's budget. The US pays 22%, mind you. So it's quite substantial, but still, UK plays a critical role. UK being a member of the Security Council, a permanent member, is very influential as well. So it's good for you to know that UK and the world, Britain and the world, is key. How we move forward to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is critical. Another point might be worth bearing in mind that that agenda, the 2030 Agenda, was actually born here. Prime Minister David Cameron was one of the 3 co-chairs for what we call the post-2015 development agenda. He led that effort. As a result, we now have adopted these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Now, I would like to give you a quick summary of how these goals mesh with what you do. So, it's common knowledge. You create jobs. You build infrastructure. And if you look at the SDGs, Goal 1, Goal 8, and Goal 11, I'm sure you know them by heart, but I'll just take you through it. Goal 1 is about ending poverty. Goal 8 is about creating decent work and economic growth. Goal 11 is about building sustainable cities and communities. All of these 3 things, by definition, are part of your overall agenda, whether it is planned or otherwise. Especially the first one, about eliminating poverty. When you create jobs, you automatically help not just the individual, but the community at large. If you look at the way how we address living conditions around the world, and how you do further planning, you are involved in providing clean water, affordable and clean energy, as well as climate action. As President Fakim said, the climate issues remain paramount to us. COP21 was a turning point. Now is the time for action on COP21. And I'm very pleased to say to you that things are starting to move. The private sector is seeing the value proposition. Now, when you talk about healthy living, you might say, well, how does that affect engineers? Actually, you create the infrastructure, the urbanization process which is taking place. It's how you build the urbanization, urban cities, creates for healthier living, creates for providing quality education, helps build communities. If the urban areas, and by the way, by 2050, 66%, 2/3 of the world and more will be in the urban areas. So better living conditions would be key. And that's where, again, you come in. So one thing which is missing, I'm sorry to say that, and I apologize for reminding you, SDG 5, which is about gender equality and women's empowerment, continues to be a challenge. I'm delighted to see Dame Dowling here as the head of the Royal Academy. We hope that by 2030, 50% of the engineers will be women. Sometimes my species doesn't get it, but we have an obligation to society as a whole to try and change that. So I have to make that pitch. I'm going to stop here simply by saying to you that if you look at different elements, so I want to take you to this. When I said Freeman Fox and Partners, I wanted to point out that you are actually the pioneers and the developers of change. That must never be forgotten. You're also risk takers at the end of the day. It's because of those risk-taking, new and creative structures come up. Humber Bridge is one, Bosphorus is another, and hundreds of new infrastructure technologies which have come in through the engineering profession, have come in through UK, Western Europe, and North America. Now the challenge is, how do we transfer that technology to the developing world so that it becomes a shared vision for our common humanity? And I'd like to leave that challenge with you. And before I close, I want to thank Dame Darling again for hosting this wonderful event. And thank you. I'm really honored to be here. Also want to thank the person who made the mistake here, Madam Ettridge sitting here, who is Meredith, is part of the team of the Royal Academy. And Meredith's mum, who was at the Institute of Chartered Accountants, was the one, as I said, who took a wrong turn and said, I should come here. But I'm so privileged to be here. And I remain at your service in every way we can. Thank you.